We're going to continue in this class with the from the two dots, actually on page Lamed Gimel in the original text, and you could find it in English text as well. We invite you again to see this shiur and this class, the previous classes on koshertube.com, with the text on tanyaonline.com. So it's the middle of chapter 26, and dealing with Acha'atzvus, or rather starting from Acha'atzvus Memili Dishmayo, which literally means sadness or downness, depression perhaps, from worldly matters. And again, to get the backdrop, yet in brief, because we did mention in previous classes what these chapters in general and this particular chapter deals with. But a quick backdrop of the Alter Rebbe pointing out how important it is, how crucial it is that we stand on the battlefield in life, conquering or triumphing over a Yetzer Hara. must be with simcha. It must be with joy and elation, and an uplifted spirit. For if not, even though we have the perfect manual how to do it, A, B, we have the might, the kayach, the adequate kayach to overcome Yetzer Hara, but if we'll be down, if we'll be a state of down-spirited, a melancholy, state of melancholy, laid back, and not with a simcha and zrizus, and simcha and nitzachim, a state of nitzachim, a state of someone's determined, marches forth with determination, we will inevitably succumb to the temptations of the Yetzer Hara. Similarly, two people which wrestle, and one could know very much the tactics of fighting, he could have the might, but if he stands in a tenuah, in a state of atzlus, he's down-spirited, lazy, laid back, depressed, or so, he will inevitably lose. So therefore it's essential, it's crucial. In other words, simcha is not another ingredient in Avodas Hashem, it's essential to our Avodas Hashem, to be 100% on top, because succumbing to the Yetzer Hara is disastrous, as we know. It doesn't matter if it's for a day or a minute, or an hour or a minute, or even a moment. As based on we learned in the previous chapter, based on the Gemara says, again, based on these different multiple Gemaras, which indicate that one has to be, one chas v'shalom falls through, even a machshava leitov, an inappropriate thought, nikra rasha, is called a rasha. In other words, it's a matter of a 24/7. Every moment we are on duty, and every moment we're serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hence, it takes, in order to be successful, as we all understand, and we can appreciate this, it takes simcha, it takes joy, and it takes, a sense of determination. So the Alter Rebbe himself in this chapter pointed out that the person falls into a state of atzvus, falls into a state of melancholy. It's not that he makes a choice to it. Unfortunately, in the duration or in the journey of life, there are situations which unfortunately are challenging and can lead a person to, in other words, bring the person down. A person can be. Again, let's talk about it theoretically, because we hope the Eibishter will, as we enter Yemei Mashiach, we will, Be'ez Hashem, see more and more how the Eibishter will alleviate us from all our challenges, and to see the Eir Kitev Lignes, the Eir Kitev, which to understand and appreciate the Eir of Teira, and uplift ourselves. Overall challenge, more so, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will minimize or diffuse the energy of any challenge, or minimize all challenges, which is again Haftachas, promises associated with Yemei Mashiach, which we will look forward experiencing more and more. But let's talk about this conceptually, hopefully, Be'ez Hashem, that the person can theoretically be challenged in his in this journey of life, and therefore he doesn't choose to be sad, he doesn't choose to be down. This is what comes, can come his way. So what does he do about it? Because if he doesn't overcome these challenges, and they truly become a obstacle in his avodas Hashem, so it interferes. In other words, if it's able to be matzliach, if it's able, these challenges are able to be successful to bring a person's spirit down, it's a downright loss, because it's not only that these challenges overcome him or her, that he is in a state. In other words, it would bring down his matzav ruach, his spirit. But in this context, namely, it's inevitable that he will be able to do his avodah. He will not be able to do his service accordingly. And unfortunately, it would lead to him, again, you could say inevitably to succumbing to the Yetzer Hara. So Dr. Rebbe, in this chapter, as we learned last week, the previous weeks, deals with these different issues which can be challenging. And again, not as much as the problem of these issues being challenging on their own merit, but to the spirit which it brings the person to. And again, is the greatest challenge, or the opposite spirit, or it's the greatest obstacle for the person when he is overtaken by these challenges. In other words, it has an effect on his spirit, for him to move on and do what he has to do and stay away from this which he is prohibited to do. So, what kind of challenges does a person can a person have? So the Rebbe began speaking about physical challenges, or which is generally encompassed in the package of Bona Chayim Mezain as we know it. Children, healthy children, gesund, health, and Mezain and Parnasa, which man can be challenged in this odyssey of life. And therefore, how does he go about it? So the Rebbe explained. This was the gist of the previous classes, how the Rebbe explains. What are you supposed to do about it? And once we know we're supposed to do it in the perspective which we place, we get a clear perspective of what these challenges are all about, we have the ability, and again, we follow this manual, or this dimension, or this chapter of the manual, how to deal with worldly problems, or problems associated with our gashmi, with our physical life. Once we put in the right perspective, a yid, and again, he exercises this, information, and other exercises his mind with the information, with this chapters of this manual, time and again, he's able to stand with his head above these challenges. Hence, he was able to maintain that simcha v'tuv livav, the joy and elation and gladness of heart, in order for him, again, as we said, how crucial and essential one's avodah one's spirit has to be in order for him to overcome the challenge of the Yetzer Hara. So he's able to do so because he puts this in the right perspective, and is able to again stand with his head above over these challenges. Hence, it would not interfere in his avodas Hashem. Today's class deals with those who are challenged, or these challenges which come not because of not physical challenges, or challenges that are associated with Chaim Gashmim, with my physical reality, but these are challenges associated with my Chaim Ruchni, my spiritual reality. And a person, a healthy Jew, a Yid, which understands the gravity of sin, or the gravity of spiritual challenges, feels very, it can be overtaken, or it can again, precisely because he is a serious person, is a serious Jew, and is avodas Hashem, he understands clearly that it's all that ani nivresi l'shamish eskeni, or ani lo nivresi ela l'shamish eskeni, that I'm here to serve my master. And again, that's the whole sole purpose why I'm here in this world. And therefore, when I feel challenged in my avodas Hashem, it also can bring a person down, again, to a down-spirited mood, which a down-spirited mood, getting back to the ikir, to the main point over here, will inevitably bring him failure in his ability to overcome to the Yetzer Hara. So it's like a catch-22. He has spiritual problems. Because of spiritual problems, it would lead him to atzvus, it would lead him to this sadness, or perhaps depression, and that's going to be challenging for him in his march, in his battle on the battlefield, which every moment in our life we are on the battlefield. We're on duty in our service to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're in the arena every moment of our life, 24 hours a day. Again, not only when we daven and learn Torah, throughout our entire 24 hours, we are on duty to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, these challenges, therefore, we have to know how to deal with these challenges, spiritual challenges. What are the spiritual challenges? Before we learn this orally, the Alter Rebbe points out over here that many times in the middle of our learning Torah, doing mitzvahs, we have these different thoughts, which we'll learn that it seems to be noble thoughts and seems to be something which is coming from a divine domain and area, but we will learn this is part of the tactics of the Yetzer Hara. Hence, there is a way to deal with it, like we try to deal with every presentation of the Yetzer Hara, with every challenge Yetzer Hara places in front of us. But on the onset, it seems very noble. It seems kind of coming from a sacred area. And what is it that a person sometimes sits or is concerned? He's preoccupied of his past. He doesn't have a pretty past, or a pretty youth, or a pretty past in the way that he's violated, and could be that he's violated grave Avedas, Rahman al-Islam, God forbid. Even though every really Aveda by definition is grave, but especially a person has packages, in other words, which he unfortunately created himself. And this can be challenging because if he's again a serious Jew, he knows what an aveda, what a sin is, and he knows what lack of a mitzvah is, or lack of doing a mitzvah right, missing a Chman Aslan Kriyashma, or anything similar. Again, the mitzvah saseh and Chman Aslan, the mitzvah leisesu, which makes a stain, and a taint is the neshama makes a stain, and neshama makes a blemish, a pgam. And the person's neshama, so l'chayret, isn't this enough to bring a person down? So how do you tell a person, you're standing on the battlefield, and on the battlefield you have to be besimcha, you have to be with joy, you have to march along with joy. And as we know, the only way to overcome the Yetzer Hara, again, it's not only knowing how to overcome the Yetzer Hara, it's not only the might we have, or that clarity we have in this manual. In other words, with this clarity which the Alter Rebbe even gives in this sefer, even the chapters up till now. But again, it's not enough. All this, we have to stand with simcha v'tuv levav. How can I stand with simcha v'tuv levav? If I know about these packages which I have, which are hanging over me, so to say, and I know them, it's not something, it's not an illusion. I know clearly that they exist, and they exist. It seems to be, it can be worrisome, and it perhaps should be worrisome. And why shouldn't it bring my spirit down? If I know everything, what it is and what I've done and the consequences to this and what it did for my neshama. So you tell the person you have to serve Hashem b'simcha v'tuv levav, with joy, and then the person doesn't. Nothing changes of the reality of an aveda, or what an aveda does and what an aveda is, and how much it's paigim, how much it blemishes the neshama. So how do I overcome it? How do I overcome this sadness? How can I stand b'simcha v'tuv levav if I know that there is I know of my past. I know of my past. I know of the violations of my past, Rahman al-Islam. I know of the transgressions of my past. So how do I deal with it? So here the Alter Rebbe says, the sadness and depression which comes from heavenly matters associated with the ruchnis shebechaye, the spirituality of my life. One has to place suggestions, that's the literal translation, in order to focus, to establish suggestions in his nefesh, to strategize. The clear, just like any other tactic of war, one has to strategize in order to be successful. He has to strategize a form, a kind of a pattern, lipater mimeno, to get rid of these worries, these preoccupations. And the question is, I shouldn't be concerned about them. Should I not be concerned about them? Should I just be lightheaded of everything I've done? It doesn't mean even a distant past. Past. The whole notion that there's a possibility and there's a vulnerability of the person to violate it, to violate Hashem's ratzon. And if in the past I have done so, I should just be lightheaded about it. What does it mean? Lipoter mimili dishmaya. Lipoter mimeno. Lipoter mi'atzos mili dishmaya. What does it mean to get rid of it? So the Alter Rebbe is going to really say over here is that in Yiddishkeit, it's not only the mitzvahs which we ought to do and the avedas we have to stay away from doing. But let's talk about the mitzvahs. There's a great mitzvah of eating matzah and Pesach. One of the 613 mitzvahs. And it has so much with it. It has emunah, and it has all the brachas which come with it, and whatever it says in pshat and remez and drush and said all about the greatness of the mitzvah of matzah. But starting from Pirush HaPasha, which is really the greatest. The idea that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Melech, Malchei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the King of all kings, has told us, which is again even that its own, as a special thing that he decided, something so special and auspicious for that matter, because he, as he decided to tell the Yidala, which is Be'ein Arieh, so distant from him, because this is a creator and this is a created being, and the HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells the Yid, I want you to connect with me through eating matzah. And I wrote it in my Torah, and this becomes one of the 613 mitzvahs. So you don't have to look anything greater than this, because it's a mitzvah which is mitzvah ha-mitzvahs, the Eibush commanded, stands of the command and tells the Yid, you must eat matzah on Pesach. You ought to eat matzah on Pesach. And with this you'll connect to me. Also mitzvah lashon tzavsa v'chibur, means connection. Mitzvah has in it the connotation of connection. This is the greatest. Before we go into the meanings behind every mitzvah, it's the mitzvah itself that we connect with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. And we ought to do so, because the Eibush is not only giving us suggestions how to connect with Him, and if I want to, I will. If I don't want, I won't. No, we must. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a mitzvah. He's a melech. He's a king. And for whatever reason we understand it and appreciate it or not, we follow His rules. He's an adin. He's a master. He's a king. Avinu Malkeinu. He's Avinu but Malkeinu. So tell us, it's such a great mitzvah of Pesach. It's going to come Chedesh Tishrei. A person's going to be also inspired after Yom Kippur. So instead of building his sukkah, he's going to make all the preparations to make sure that on the 15th day of Tishrei he's going to eat matzah. To make sure that that 15th day of Tishrei he's going to have enough matzah to eat for the next 7 days or 8 days. Because matzah is such a great mitzvah. And he's going to bake matzah and whatever, just to make sure that when the 15th day of Kippur, he's so inspired again from his experience of Rosh Hashanah Kippur, the 15th day of Pesach he's going to eat matzah. 15th day of Tishrei rather, he's going to eat matzah. Now that is conversely, Sukkah is such a great mitzvah, and primarily because the Eibush told us that the Sukkah Teishu Shivas Yom. It's a great mitzvah, so it's going to come Chedesh Nisan. It's the person, instead of eating matzah, he's going to sit and build a sukkah. And the 15th night of Pesach, and the 15th night of the Seder, 15th night of Nisan, instead of sitting to the Seder, he's going to go out to the sukkah, and he's going to say this is a mitzvah. And look, it says in the Torah it's a mitzvah. And is it not a mitzvah? It's one of the greatest mitzvahs. The Sukkah Teishu Shivas Yom. But at the end of the day, not as eating matzah is a mitzvah, and not as sitting in a sukkah is a mitzvah. Because the Yiddishkeit, when it comes to mitzvahs aseh, particularly, but even in different times in Leises, again, not and if it's not Shabbos, you're allowed opening a light in the middle of the week. But let's talk about mitzvah aseh. As great as the mitzvah is, and this is the punchline, it has its time. And if it's done not in its right time, it is worth zero, not 20%, not 30%, not 10%, not 1%. It's worth nothing. The person didn't do nothing in enhancing his relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Quite on the contrary, he took important time and he took important energy, which he had to invest. In this case, again, Chedesh Tishrei, the month of Tishrei, following Kippur, to build a sukkah, and he took his time and energy to bake matzahs. And similarly, instead of baking matzahs in the month of Nisan, he took his time and energy to build a sukkah, and he's going in the total wrong direction. And it could be ultimately it's a sin. It's something which is completely useless. It's pointless. And sometimes even it could be a sin as well. The Yom Kippur, the King God lets to go into Yom Kippur, into the Kodesh HaKadosh, into the Holy of Holies. And with this he brings a kapara to the entire of Am Yisrael. for him, for the Bnei Beisei, Yishuv Beisei, and then for the Kainim, and ultimately for the entire Am Yisrael. And the whole year, Yidden wait for Yom Kippur, they should be mechupor, they should be able to experience this complete cleansing process, which comes through our fasting and through our doing tshuva. But in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, it was the time when Yom Kippurim, with the Kohen Gadol went into Kodesh HaKadoshim in order to bring a kapara for all Am Yisrael. So this is once a year, and one individual, and this is one place, which is the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which the Yom Kippur must, which is again not the holy of holies, with the Yom Kippurim, the Kohen Gadol, which is again it's one individual, an achas b'shana, one time and one place, and they all come together, and the greatest is accomplished. So we know that if the Kohen Gadol goes in at that time, he's accomplishing the greatest accomplishments. But if he goes in a few minutes before or a few minutes after, in other words, in the wrong time, not only is he not doing a mitzvah, not only is he not accomplishing all these great accomplishments, quite on the contrary, he is violating one of the greatest avedas. And Achman al-Islam, if you look at the Pirush HaPashut, it constitutes death penalty. But it's ultimately the death penalty, from the heavenly court. The Bezin doesn't put him to death, but you're talking about the gravity of the sin. In that moment, which he had to do so because was the greatest mitzvah, and he accomplishes the greatest accomplishments, a moment before, a moment after, it's considered a grave sin. Because in Yiddishkeit, there's precision not only to the way the mitzvahs are performed, but in Yiddishkeit, it's the precise timing of these mitzvahs, when and how they ought to be performed. And in this case as well, a person has baggage, and he feels that this is bringing him down, this is weighing him down, and therefore he again doesn't have the adequate positive spirit or the adequate positivism which would contribute to an appropriate spirit in order for him to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Like again, the essentiality of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we explain the essentiality of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu precisely with joy and gladness of heart. So the person has to know that there is a time for retrospection and a time for reflection. The moment you cross that time, and the clock turns, or the time which is given to a Yid to retrospect and reflect, and he goes ahead and he uses the time subsequently to reflect on his sins, it's not only not a mitzvah, it's not only not a good thing, but quite on the contrary, it's a clear violation, or namely, this is a clear transgression, you could even say, because in the end of the day, this is one of the tactics of the Yetzer Hara, to bring these thoughts into the person's mind. Oh, you have sinned. Oh, you're a terrible person. And the reason why the Yetzer Hara is doing so is just because a minute later he has another presentation, which is a clear-cut sit and a clear-cut violation. In other words, the idea of a person thinking of his maimed matzav of his state is a clear tactic. Let's use it to be more accurate. It's a tactic of the Yetzer Hara, hence a very negative idea, a negative step, because the Yetzer Hara wants to bring a person, or he has a presentation for you. He wants to show you something which is prohibited to look at, for example. He wants to drop a thought into your mind which is prohibited to entertain your mind with, to think about. He wants to bring a scenario for you to listen to something which you're not supposed to listen to. Between, again, in the context of man and his creator, even man and his fellow friend, Lashon Hara, whatever it is. But he knows if you're going to stand with an upright spirit, an upright beat, you are going to win over him. So he starts dropping these thoughts in your mind, how bad you are, how you did this and how you did that, and things which are true, and you know very well they're true. With this, he feels that he can bring your spirit down. A moment later, he has his presentation for you, in this above mentioned, either of these above mentioned examples, and he knows with this he's inevitably going to have you in his net. So thinking about something, retrospecting or reflecting on the sin at that moment is a good thing. It is a terrible thing. It couldn't get worse, because that's the first step of the Yetzer Hara, throwing his blanket over you and and becoming the balabas, the authoritative, standing with the complete with a complete authority. In other words, it's the first step of the Yetzer Hara, trying to overtake the person, is that he's going to bring his spirit down. Once his spirit down, as we all know it, that's when the Yetzer Hara feels this is easy steps for me to overcome this Yidala, which is standing in a state of melancholy and depression. So does it mean that periodically we don't have to reflect in retrospect on our sins? Absolutely we do. But there's times are given for it. It says, for example, by Krishma Shalamita, before a person goes to sleep, he makes a cheshbon on nefesh, and the calculation of what I could have accomplished that day. I know that I'm here in this world for a particular mandate, to bring a Kodesh Baruch Hu, to bring a Lukus, to bring godliness and the godly reality into this world, starting from Torah, mitzvahs, my learning, my davening. How was it with my davening? Did I come on time? Did I focus? Did I say did I say Baruch Hu? Did I say Kedusha? Did I pay attention adequately? This certainly a person has to reflect how he did today with his davening, because davening is one of the components, how the Yid is miskashet, collects the Kodesh Baruch Hu, and the Yid opens up the window between Creator and creation. And how did I do my learning Torah? Because the Eibishter wants a Yid to learn Torah every single day. Every single day. Did I waste time? Did I come on time? Did I learn well? Did I pay my full attention to the Torah? All these things a person certainly has to reflect, just like any business person when he's involved. Periodically, you have to take out the books and see how we're doing. In the first quarter, in the second quarter, but in this case, again, it's every single day. It's every day a person has his mandate that he has to fulfill. He has accomplishments of today what he could not do the day before, and he cannot do the following day. So certainly, when it comes to the end of the day, he has to make a cheshbon nefesh. And it says that it's the time after the person says Kishma before he goes to sleep. And with this achlata, when he makes this right calculation and he reflects rightfully, and with tzedek. And then, again, a cheshbon tzedek, as the lashon is. Certainly, it's a shaila. Is it a question the next morning? Is he not going to get up to perform better with his mandate? Obviously, he will. And the reason is because he did it in the right time. But the moment before and the moment after, it not only is not a good thing, but on the contrary, it could be detrimental to the person's neshama. And here, we're going to try to see this orally over here. After explaining this orally, we try to run through the text. So he says, much more so when he doesn't, and it is not to mention Mishas, a person serves HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that he should tzarich lav. The Alter Rebbe is going to say these thoughts should not even come in, not only when we're stam out there, or in other words, not Mishas we're learning. If you're sitting and learning, and all of a sudden the Yetzer Hara throws in this, or rather, if you start reflecting in the middle of your Gemara, in the middle of learning your Torah, how terrible you are, you should know this is a direct message from the Yetzer Hara. Hence, a terrible thing, and hence coming from a makir, a source which is loiteiv, a makir which is bilti tahir, an inappropriate and impure or source. Hence, just like anything else which comes from an impure source, we have to throw it away. This thought that how terrible I am, and I did this, that, and the other, I have to throw it away, because now is not the time. It's a sin, for that matter, to think about this, or it's something. Well, we used the term we used before. It's a sin. It's a detrimental to my nefesh. So it says not only b'shas aveda, when a person davens, a person learns Torah. What he has to do is he has to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with joy and gladness of heart. But he says more so. Someone is a businessman, the derech eretz. Again, he's out there. He's not involved 24 hours in learning Torah. In other words, he's not involved in kedusha. He's out there in his work. And again, then he's going to say, when I'm davening and learning, I know that these thoughts disturb me. But when I'm out there in my work, and I'm out there in my office, I'm out there in my business, so I'm sitting there, isn't it? And then all of a sudden I start remembering about things I've done in the past. Maybe it is a good time to reflect. It is a good time to retrospect, because I'm not davening, I'm not learning. So the answer is no. The Fedish not, absolutely not, because again, the Yetzer Hara has something to present to you in the next 30 seconds. And he knows that if you will stand with strength and you'll stand with simcha in those next 30 seconds, he knows that you will overcome this which he wants to present to you. And again, something which perhaps you're not supposed to see or think or hear and so on. And he knows that when you're going to stand with a simcha, you will be able to overcome this. But if you'll stand with atzvus, with melancholy, he has you in his net. So when he throws, when you start, you're realizing that, or the moment you realize, or to say when you're sitting at your desk, at your office, or any middle of any business transaction, and suddenly these thoughts of your negative past come to mind, and you want to paint this to be a noble or a godly or a rather divine presentation, shall you know it's coming directly from the Yetzer Hara, and therefore you got to throw it out, just like you throw it out in the middle of davening, or you throw it any other inappropriate thought throughout the day. As he says, even if that's a vidike again, because there's a precise time, and if it's not in the precise time, it's a terrible thing. So it says, even in the middle of his business, if he falls, it falls into him a worry, a concern from worldly reality, from heavenly realities, which means that he thinks, but again, it's not challenged by the physical, but it's challenged by his spiritual past. You should know that even b'shas hasakah, in the middle of his daily business, which he can say that this is probably coming from a good place because I'm not davening, I'm not learning. You should know, biyadua, this is known it's from the conspiracies and the strategies of the Yetzer Hara, kedei lahapilei, to bring the persons down achakach, subsequently, but taivas chas v'shalom, in temptations and lusts, God forbid, which he has a moment later to present to you. Kinei, as is known, if not so, where does this come? Why all of a sudden did he start thinking, did he start reflecting of his negative past? Is he sitting in the middle of a good Seder speech, or is he sitting in shul? Is it in the middle of Yom Kippur, or in the middle of a gathering where people are trying to arouse their neshama? If in the middle of a Shabbos meal, or in the middle of a experience, a Yom Kippur experience, or a Shoshani experience, he's sitting in why all of a sudden is he inspired, so to say, to become close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore he feels terrible about his past? Why all of a sudden this inspiration? He's not sitting in any moment in any environment which would lead him to reflect in retrospect of his past. And the answer and why it's coming to him is because it's a clear message and a clear flash coming directly from the Yetzer Hara. Because there was nothing which should have led him. So it's not, when it comes to Asay Tov, a person doesn't have to say, if he has an opportunity in the middle of his learning, in the middle of his business, to take out a Mishnah, so learning Torah, the learning Torah is by definition a good thing. And learning Torah doesn't have a time. Learning Torah is every moment. And as long as the person can learn Torah, he can learn Torah. Doesn't need to be inspired to learn Torah. But in this case, the person should have this middle of sitting in the middle of his business, and middle of his world involvement in worldly affair. All of a sudden, this inspiration would enter him. And again, not inspiration to do good, or to give more tzedakah, or to think how you could help another person, but how terrible, in other words, that a heavy load should all of a sudden fall upon him about his terrible past. Where does that come from? And the answer is, and there's no reason for it to come in the middle of his be'emtza hasakah, in the middle of his engaging in worldly affairs. And the answer why it's coming in is because the Yetzer Hara knows that if he'll bring him down, he'll have him in a few seconds later when he wants to present to him this which he wants to present to him. So one has to know that it's coming from the Yetzer Hara, and there's no point of reflecting or retrospecting in any time other than the time which is designated for the person, which we know again on a daily basis in the end of the day. Or Yom Kippur is a time that reflect, and when you say Al Chet, or it says Chedesh El, for example, it was a Chedesh Cheshmered, that also doesn't mean that throughout the 30 days, every moment I'm sitting and reflecting or lamenting my past. Even Chedesh El, there's a time. So he says that you should know that if this sadness enters, these thoughts of fast sadness enter the person when he's learning Torah, when he's involved in Aveda, or B'shas Aveda when he's davening, or may it be any other type of Aveda. If he's learning or he's davening, if it fell into him not in the time, in other words, these thoughts fall into his mind, not in the time of direct service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He has to understand and pay attention and put it in the perspective. It's the time is not an opportune, appropriate time for true sadness. And he adds, even to be concerned and worried and be preoccupied for grave sins which Torah itself classifies as avin chamor. the Torah classifies as a grave sin. It's not the time. And for this there has to be an establishment time, an opportune time, so the person is calm and settled and took that time to understand Hashem, to ponder and meditate in the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which he sent to him. In other words, the person has to have, like anything else, when you're in the middle of eating lunch, you don't have a meeting, you don't have an important meeting. You finish with your lunch and then you go on to another step, and even before you go into the meeting, you take out all your your files, and you look into them, and you understand them, and you understand what the meeting is all about, and where you're heading, and what is the goal of the meeting. And then in order to make it a successful meeting, but it's a designated time which you place the adequate focus on the details which have to contribute to the success of the meeting. And the same thing over here, the time a person is given, usually again, it's usually to the end of the day, before a person goes, concludes, makes the final conclusion of the day, again, usually after Krishma Shalamita, but that's a time that he stops, he sits, he settles, he has the moment to ponder in the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, understand the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to this Melech Malchem Lachem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I didn't overcome my temptation and lust, hence I violated, I was mated, I demonstrated rebelliousness to this great Creator. So he has it's an opportune time for him to think and ponder the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, understand what the gravity of sin, in order that this should truly contribute to a true broken heart. Is truly a true broken heart. Not something which is just a sadness or a depression which is going to just lead him to another catastrophic result from the Yetzer Hara. But Meridus Amit is true bitterness. And literally, bitterness, as we know the difference, Alter Rebbe later is going to explain the difference between Meridus and Atzvus. Sadness, a person comes down in spirit. He says people or depression. People are depressed, they can't even cry. Meridus, there's a lot of chayis, there's a lot of vitality. Meridus, a person gets chayis. A good stretch of a good cry, and a good, like famous Rushin said, I heard it again in the name of others as well, but I remember it says in the name of the Rushin, there's nothing so whole like a broken heart. But this is a broken heart doesn't mean the person is depressed. Depressed is not a broken heart. It's a certain dryness which just leads, as we all know it just leads to all to terrible things. There's a lot of chayis in meridus. There's a lot of passion in meridus. Meridus means bitterness. Person gets chayis good to give like we say, he's able to express a good cry, which this in itself wipes away so much of a person's sins, as we know it. As it says, famous capital in Psalms 51. It's explained this time in other places. Again, as other places, he doesn't say clearly in the end of the day, but we know before by Krishma Shalamita, before when a person concludes his day, or Chodesh El throughout the year, Yom Kippur, Aser Mitzvah, etc. This is another point where this will conclude today's class, that it's important to know that not only there's a designated time for the person to reflect and retrospect, but more so, he has to know that once he makes a cheshbon nefesh, he's able to ponder on the reality of the godless HaKadosh Baruch Hu and understand what he's accomplished in a state of rebelliousness towards this Melech Malchem Lachem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the King of all kings. When Hashem stood there and said, do not think this, do not look there, do not listen to that, do not speak that, do not do that. And I knew that despite it was a temptation, I know HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us the koyach to overcome all these temptations, and I went ahead with a deliberate choice to allow these temptations to overcome me. Despite I knew Hashem was standing right over me and telling me and commanding me at that very split second or millisecond, don't do that, don't say that, don't think that. And I did so, and the person has the opportunity to reflect on this which he's done. And with this it causes him a true a broken heart, a heart which is going to lead to mirid, this broken heart which is going to lead to miridus amitis, true passionate bitterness, and again good resolutions in the future, and asking Melech Malchem HaKadosh Baruch Hu to have rachmanas on him, with your great passion, compassion, your great pity, have rachmanas on me, and the Eibishter is there with open hands to accept him and again reestablish the relationship. He has to know that because of this experience, if you've done it at the right time and it led to true Leib Nishbar, to the true broken heart, the true Meridus Amitis, you should know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu indeed opened his arms and took you back in, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself erased HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself erased every single sin that you ever had in the very past, in the far past, or even the past day, and is ready to accept you, and he completely annulled, completely wiped away all this sin. So not only that the minute later or the second later, after you've done this retrospection, reflection, after this cheshbon hanefesh, not only a second later, it's not the appropriate time. A second later, there's nothing to cry over about anymore. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu hevir chatosei, HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw your earnestness and your sincerity to establish a new page with him. He pulled away, he turned the page, he wiped away the sin, and not only that, he transformed the sin in like the Gemara says, if it was even tishgog, says it was inadvertent, and even zachi, it would be transformed into merits, as we know the koach of tshuva, that it's not only the person reaches his previous state, but on the contrary, he opens up a new chapter, and a chapter with the b'cheiliyati, like it says in Lashon Hazayer, with greater intensity, precisely because of his past. He opens up a new level of relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So not only that, a second later, he has to jump back into his Avodas Hashem, and his learning Torah, and his davening, and his doing mitzvahs, with joy and gladness of heart. And again, not only because that's the right time, but more than that, he can do it with pure simcha, with pure joy, because there is no reason for him to be sad anymore, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu hevir chatos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu really truly wiped away the sin. And this is what he concludes. It's explained there that right after his heart was broken, and those established and designated times, he has a right to completely, again, not only because it wouldn't be timely, but he has the right to completely remove this sadness or this depression from his heart, or the sadness from his heart completely. And the yamin emunah shleima, should believe with complete faith, ki Hashem hevir chatosei, HaKadosh Baruch Hu completely wiped away his sin, v'rav lisleach. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't only selech, not only is he's someone who forgives, but like we say in davening, chanun hamar belisleach, which exists, it doesn't exist by the human nature, or very rarely does exist by human nature. When someone sins to a person, he apologizes, sins again, he apologizes again, and a third time, a fourth time, it kind of becomes harder, maybe even impossible. Where he has to work very hard to forgive the same person with the same violation and the same transgression. When it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is infinite, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's midas, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's attributes and characters are also infinite. If he has the midah of slicha, if he has the midah to forgive, his midah of forgiving is also infinite. It's Ein Sof, and therefore we don't say the Eibush is selech, b'chanun hamar belisleach. But like he said, that's what he says over here. Not only hevir chatos, but v'rav lislech. His slicha comes a place from rav, which again blik vul. So he has to know with all certainty that the moment after he does tshuva, and the moment after he does the right cheshbon tzedek, he has to jump right back into Avodas Hashem, metech simcha v'tuv levav, with joy and gladness of heart, v'zuya simcha amitis, and this is the true simcha b'Hashem, in God, abba achar etzav, which comes after this etzav, after the sadness, like we've mentioned before. And what means simcha mitis? That not only I could serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with true joy, because it's not the right time the moment after, but it's simcha mitis, the true joy and the genuine joy, the pure joy, is because I know there's no reason anymore to be atzev, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu hevir chatosei, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wiped away his sin, and again more so, rav lisleach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a selech in a way of rav, chanun hamar belisleach. Have a wonderful evening.